Hello everyone. Today we want to talk about the spread of symmetric distributions. The most widely measurement that we use is the standard deviation. What is the standard deviation? The standard deviation shows how much variation there is from the mean. And so you can think about the standard deviation as the average distance that the values are from the mean. And so we want to know how far or how close the data values are from the average. You want to note that a low standard deviation indicates that the data points tend to be very close to the mean. And so if you think about this with the histogram, the bars will be close to one another and close to the center. A high standard deviation indicates that the data is spread out over a large range of values. And so again, with the histogram, what that will be telling you is that the bars are further apart from one another and further from the center. And so let's take a look at these two histograms here. Both of them are symmetric. We would like to know which one has the higher standard deviation. And so just by looking at them, what you want to look for is where are the high peaks located at from the center. And so let's take a look at A. If you notice, the high peaks for A are at the end, and they're kind of far away from the center here. Unlike B, who has a high peak right here at the center. And so what that is telling you is A will have a higher standard deviation than B because of these high peaks being located further from the center, unlike B, whose highest peak is right there at the center. And so this is one way you can look at the standard deviation through a histogram. Of course, we can find the standard deviation. And so let's look at the notation first. Here we have S. That's equal to our sample standard deviation. X is equal to each value in the data set. X bar is equal to our sample mean. N is equal to the sample size. How many data values do you have? Sigma is equal to the sum. It means add them up. And so to find the standard deviation, we have S equals. You take each value minus the mean, take those differences and square them, add them up, divide it by n minus 1, then take the square root. So piece of cake is what you're probably thinking right now. Actually, that's not what you're thinking, I'm sure. You're probably thinking, what is this? What have I got myself into? This is kind of scary looking. You need to trust me when I say this is not that bad as it looks. And so don't stop the video, just stay with me. You will get through in finding the standard deviation. And so let's take an example. Suppose we have the following results from a 10-point quiz. We want to use these values as our data set for this example. And so this is a basic, simple example, but it will get the job done of finding the standard deviation and explaining what does the standard deviation mean. What you should do now is pause the video and write these values down. You will need them, and so pause the video and write these numbers down. And so when finding the standard deviation, your first step in finding the standard deviation is you need to find the mean. You need the mean to find the standard deviation, and so you want to find X bar. And so recall, in finding the sample mean X bar, it's going to be the sum of all the data values divided by the sample size. How many values do you have? And so x bar is going to be equal to 5 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 9. And so you want to find their total sum. And then count how many values do we have. We have 7 values. And so you're going to divide that sum by 7. And so x bar is equal. The sum of those values is 49. And so you have 49 divided by 7, which is 7. And so our mean x bar is equal to 7. And so we're going to use this mean in finding the standard deviation. What I like to do when finding the standard deviation is I like to draw a table. It makes things a little bit easier, especially if you make a mistake. You can easily find that mistake. Please pretend these are straight lines too. What you want to do first in the first column is you're going to write the data values that we have. And so here we have 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 9. What we're going to do in our second step is you're going to find the difference. So you're going to take each value minus the mean and find that difference. And so you're going to have 5 minus 7 equal minus 2. 5 minus 7 equal minus 2. 6 minus 7 equal minus 1. 7 minus 7 equal 0. 8 minus 7 equal 1. 9 minus 7 equal 2. 9 minus 7 equal 2. And so let's just pause and look at these differences here. If you take a note, these differences that we have here, these differences are called deviations. What they are telling you is the distance that each value that we have here is from the mean. Also take note, the sum of these differences is equal to 0, which does us no good. And so your next step after finding the differences is you want to square those differences. And so you're going to have minus 2 squared equal 4. Minus 2 squared equal 4. Minus 1 squared equal 1. 0 squared equal 0. 1 squared equal 1. 2 squared equal 4. 2 squared equal 4. And so we're going to be using these values that we just squared for our next slide. And so let's just recall the standard deviation S is equal to each value minus the mean, square the differences, add them up, divided by n minus 1, take the square root. And so what we want to do next, and you are getting close to finding the standard deviation, is you want to add those squares that we just found. And so you're going to have 4 plus 4 plus 1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 4 plus 4. And so you want to find the total sum. When you add them up, you should get 18. And so let's just take a note right here. This 18 is this top number right here in the square root. And that is the hardest part of finding the standard deviation. And so what you want to do next is you're going to have S equals 18 divided by n minus 1. Recall n is our sample size, is how many values we have. We have 7 values. And so you're going to have 18 divided by 7 minus 1. 18 divided by 6 and that gives you 3. And so now it's time for the last step. I promise you, this is the last step of finding the standard deviation. You're going to have S equals the square root of 3. And so S equals 1.73. And there you go. There is your standard deviation. And so you made it. You have found the standard deviation. And so that wasn't too painful, I don't think. And so let's take a note at what this number is telling us. What this number is saying is this is the average distance from the mean. That's what this value is telling you right here. And so what that is telling you is that each value in our data set has an average distance of 1.73 from our mean of 7. And so let's go over what we have learned and take another important note. The standard deviation takes into account how far each data value is from the mean. And so we like to report the standard deviation when the distribution is symmetric. The reason being is because the standard deviation is affected by outliers. And so you can report the standard deviation with outliers. You just want to take a note that it could be higher and is affected by those outliers. And so there's what the standard deviation means. That's how you can find the standard deviation by hand. We do have another way in finding the standard deviation, and that's with the calculator. And so let me just go to the home screen here. What you want to do first, and you're probably thinking, why didn't you show me this sooner? If we can do it with the calculator, why did you show me by hand? Well, it's nice to know how to do things by hand and understand the meaning. What you want to do first with your TI calculator is you want to turn it on. After you turn it on, you want to go to the Stat button, click on the Stat button, and then click Enter on Edit. What you want to do then is type in the data values inside a list. Just a note, let's say you had numbers inside your list. Go up where you highlight that list name, push second, clear, then enter. And that will clear the list for you. If you hit delete, you would delete the list itself. What you want to do in your blank list is type in each number we had in our data set. So 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 9. Once you have your values inside a list, you want to hit Stat again. You then want to go over to where it says Calculate, and then click Enter on the one variable Stats. You then need to tell what list you had those values in. And so for me, I had it in L1, and so I will push second, then 1. If you had it in L2, you would hit second 2, L3, second 3, and so forth. After you tell it what list you had your values in, click Enter. And so notice right here, the 7 is our mean, X bar, which we found. SX right here, this is our sample standard deviation. And so 1.3, exactly what we found by hand. And then here's N, here's our sample size. And so this is how you can find the standard deviation with the calculator. It makes things nice when you have a lot of numbers in your data set. And so you can either find the standard deviation by hand or with the calculator. You pick which one you prefer best. And so that's what the standard deviation is, and that's how you find the standard deviation.